Hey everybody, Jay Young here with the Jay Young Show, and also my co-host Jordan Soto. Jordan, how you doing?
Hello. As we've been talking about the energy and the oil and gas industry, Jay, throughout the shows that we've been releasing, I think there's one thing that hasn't truly been talked about yet. And I'm really excited for this podcast that we're about to, dive into. And that is the green movement and carbon capture. I think that it's something that everybody in the industry is kind of facing right now, but it was a little bit of a wild west. I don't know that there was really like a baseline for expectations and incentives and then understanding like what that means. I mean, do you understand what carbon capture and CCS, CCUS, I mean, just to add more acronym in the industry?
I don't understand why we would want to capture our carbons, or if that's really the acronym, if that's the definition. I don't know. Hey, but did you wear the green jacket because we're talking green today? Is that it?
I did not put those pieces together, but hey, look at that. We're a green movement from fashion to sequestration. So I guess how it goes.
No,
it's a really interesting conversation. We dive into all facets of it. If you're really curious about what CCS, CCUS, carbon capture, and the whole movement towards getting the energy industry more green, you're definitely going to want to take a listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have green shoes with that outfit too?
Actually, I do. I mean,
look at there. Look at that. That is so awesome. Well, hey, Jordan, let's all think about the green shoes, but let's also go capture some carbons. Listen up right here. Jay Young here. We're at Super Doug Fort Worth Convention Center. Great. I mean, this is over 2,000 people. This is really, really good. A lot of people, a lot of exhibitors, a lot of sponsors, and all of us. We have Jordan. I mean, what else can you ask? I mean, we have the best people on the planet. Right now, we're interviewing Rich Adams.
Yes.
Rich's fame, I should say, and success has been in the midstream business. So, Rich, welcome to the Jay Young Show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And when you say pipeline, does that mean that you just think, okay, well, hey, there's all this oil and gas that's being produced over here, and we need to take it to a facility? And so is that, what's the brains behind it, or what's the starting process?
Yeah, I think you find an opportunity for an arbitrage or where there's money to be made. Typically what will happen is producers will be producing lots of oil and gas and have no place to go. And I think sort of the last resort after trucking and all the others is to come in and build a large diameter long-haul pipeline to get to the source.
Hey, we'll talk about Keystone, the Keystone deal. And how about that? How was that detrimental? Because I think about trucking, and I think about all the trucking, and we still truck all out of Canada. We can't. We can't produce enough, or we can't transport enough.
I was actually with the competitor of Keystone for 30 years. Enbridge.
Oh, wow.
Keystone was a Trans-Canada, so they were a competitor at the time. Enbridge had 6 pipelines out of Canada that are currently in operation. So from our perspective, it afforded the opportunity for Enbridge to expand, to kind of take up that space for Keystone at the time. But definitely a negative for the U.S. over the long term.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, we're still moving lots of Canadian oil into the U.S.
Yeah.
And you work with CCS, or we had talked about. Okay,
yes,
great.
I retired from the pipeline industry, and we took some of my competencies and then some of our partner companies, Blackbrush Oil and Gas, Flat Rock Energy, and some others, and put together a group that's looking at carbon capture directly. And we're looking primarily in Texas, but we've taken all those competencies together, and we think we've come up with a combination that really makes sense.
I just feel like CCS, CCUS, ESG, it's been the headline of so many conversations, so many conferences. I mean, heart-built conferences around the topic, So talk about this. It feels almost like another one of those gold rush kind of things. So there's a little bit of this like, okay, regulations, people buying in, companies working around this. What's been your journey with this and motivation to take it on?
That's a great question.
What is carbon capture?
Yeah, good
Capture
question, Jay.
carbon? Is there more to it? Can I get some?
It's the buzzword. Yeah, you're breathing out some right now, right?
Man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's been a real challenge. I think when we started to do it, there was some demand by some of the customers we had that were
Right.
moving oil and gas. And that demand is they were looking for solutions. They
Right.
saw government regulation coming. We're going to have to capture carbon. There's some incentives right now. And I think in the U.S. right now, there's a number of incentives, but there's no stick yet.
Yeah.
And I think the stick is coming, whether it's coming in the form of taxes or regulation, that is coming. So it's been a bit slow in developing
Right.
because there's no have to. But
Right.
the have to is coming. The have to exists in Europe. It exists in Canada. It
Right.
exists in other places.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a need here. And what we really focused on is getting things done and getting projects, developing real projects where you can make money
Yeah.
with that existing carrot out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask too, is like the incentive, like to incentivize companies to think of it as a have to versus a want to. I mean, I think we saw a little bit of that with ESG initiatives particularly, but when it comes to incentivizing companies, what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, right now it's government regulation.
Yeah.
There's a 45Q tax credit, and that's essentially where we're going to make our revenue.
Yeah.
That 45Q right now it's about $85 a ton if you put it directly in the ground.
Oh.
If you use it for oil enhancement,
Uh-huh.
it's probably about $60 a ton. So that's really the incentive to get it done.
Yeah.
And the trick is to be able to do that, to be able to build a pipe, to be able to capture it,
To be able to do what
measure
again?
it,
To build
build pipelines,
for
to
carbon capture.
for carbon capture.
I guess the
That's all.
first thing I was thinking about was why do you want to capture carbons?
Yeah.
What's the big?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
What's the big?
Again, it's
What's the big deal?
There you go. Man, I want to go
Yeah.
capture some carbon.
Is it because of the ozone layer? Is it
No,
because there's
it's,
too much in the atmosphere?
Carbon, what they've come up with, there's a direct correlation to the amount of carbon in the air with global warming. So effectively, the
Does it come out of the ground? Does carbon come out of the ground with oil and gas?
Yeah,
Is
it's,
that how?
it's produced when you burn oil and gas really at the burner head.
Right.
There's a lot of CO2 produced.
Yeah.
So right now that CO2 is going into the air, and effectively I think the amount of CO2 in the air right now is 0.04%. So it's a very small percentage. And they say as that increase is just a small amount, it's going to have a dramatic increase on global warming.
Right.
And
What
again, there's a lot
feels
of-
small is actually in the big picture a big impact
Yes.
factor.
Yeah. They say the science is complete. I don't know. I always think that science is always going to push back on certain things.
Right.
But I think where we got, and we're ex-oil and gas guys, when we looked at it, I think society has decided that carbon needs to be controlled, that we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I think that the first thing to do is capture what's going into the air today. And especially from pure sources, the cost to capture that is
Right.
within that $85 that's out there.
Yeah.
So that can be done tomorrow. And we can make a I think a material difference in terms of what carbon's going out. There's a lot of work being done from capturing carbon directly from the air,
Right.
and it's super expensive. The cost of that right now, I'm guessing, is a minimum of $400 or $500 a ton just to capture it from the air, and that doesn't include pipelines or anything else.
Holy
So
moly.
The cost of that direct air capture is huge.
Yeah.
And then with whatever we capture as well, there's a potential offset of other carbon that's being produced. So
Yeah.
airlines and others are talking about being carbon neutral and making this commitment.
Right.
So a lot of what we'll have is we will have credits that we'll be able to sell to others to offset their carbon.
This is so interesting to me, the topic of selling carbon credits, because
Yes.
I believe Elon Musk does that with the carbon credits he gets from Tesla. He can then sell to China or something like that and then make money off of it, which is an interesting play, for a business to build up their money. Speaking of Elon, a lot of things happening in space there, and I will tie this together, I promise. But when you're looking at carbon capture and you're looking at the putting it in the ground or building a pipeline, they've also talked about putting it into space. What do you think about that? Is it cost inhibitive
I
or
can't imagine what time where that would be the answer. I think
maybe?
there's-
That's so funny. Okay, so you're building pipeline. Are you building pipelines or what's
we will be.
Okay.
We're just developing our project.
Okay. What are you most excited about with CCS?
Really, I think it's the opportunity to take what's going into the air right now
Mm-hmm.
and be really a low cost. And I think it extends the life of fossil fuels. You
Yeah.
hear a lot of talk out there about the negativity of oil and gas,
Mm-hmm.
and we believe the economics are there to capture the CO2 associated with oil and gas and make that a low cost alternative.
Right.
It's much cheaper than renewables and others. So it really solves the problem. If you can, even coal plants, you have the opportunity to capture the carbon that's associated with the coal plant, it really reduces the majority of the impact it has on the environment. So it takes away that argument, let's end fossil fuels tomorrow.
Right.
And this is definitely an alternative to that. It's much easier to capture all the CO2 that's associated with it, and you're solving a good part of that problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, so walk me through how that you had some success in midstream. I'm assuming with different projects. How does this thing going to work? If you said, okay, I'm gonna go out here, and I'm assuming that you have some partners that you are putting together a platform company or something
Yes.
to get some private equity or institutional.
Yes.
Which route are you going? How will you get your money to
Yeah, initially we've got a small holdco we set up in Ozona. And with Ozona, we're going out and we're developing individual projects, and we're going to fund those projects individually.
do? Okay.
So what we'll go out to the market, and we're just starting that process right now. And what
Individually, you mean?
Yes, individual projects. So, for example, we've got a project in the Permian where we've got pore space. We're going to be drilling a well, and then with that, we're going to be building a pipeline gathering system for CO2 that's being produced out in the Permian right now through gas processing plants. So there's a number of gas processing plants in the Permian that are putting pure CO2 in the air right now.
Wow.
So the opportunity for that project, and that project is probably somewhere in the area of $600 to $700 million for the total development. All of that will capture somewhere in the area of 2 million tons of CO2 a year. So those economics are pretty good economics, and we think there's a lot of investment opportunity out there for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you strip it out and do something else with it, or I guess it's
A lot of it right now, I think that especially in the Permian, what we're seeing is there's a lot of EOR demand. So that's what we're getting is we have this well in place, or we will have a well in place, and we're getting a lot of producers out there saying, hey, we'd rather have that CO2 for EOR purposes, and we can produce oil and gas with that. And
What's EOR?
Enhanced oil recovery.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enhanced oil recovery, meaning
Yeah.
that you could use that to put it back down. See, you guys talk so fast and
Yes.
not that smart.
Energy and
Sometimes.
oil and gas industry is like, it's, if you want acronyms, if you want just to be
Alphabet soup, right?
it's
all
alphabet
of it.
soup. It's
Man,
just
we could be here
acronym
forever.
after. It's like, I'm like, wait, hold on, that wins
Everybody
what?
in this conference, all these different people have a different facet of the business, and
I know.
that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is.
So anyway, so
impressive.
they could strip it out and use it for
Yeah.
enhanced, which means they can put it back in the ground and continue to.
Yeah, what
and
happens is they put it
produce
back in the
more.
ground, and it helps produce significant more amounts of oil.
Which would be
in a
awesome.
or in a field that's mature, you can inject the CO2 with a CO2 flood and effectively remove more oil.
Yeah.
About half of the CO2 doesn't come up with the oil, so you're actually sequestering it forever, a big chunk, and then you're circulating it around and reusing it as well. So
Yeah.
it's a great way to use the CO2 and increase oil production.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome.
Yes.
So the accent, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Minnesota.
Minnesota. I
Yes, I did.
couldn't tell.
Yes.
Jordan was talking about your
Again,
accent.
About you betcha, all the other trying to lose.
Wait, the favorite one though, you betcha.
You betcha.
You betcha.
Yes.
That's in Fargo. Is that the movie
The
Fargo?
movie Fargo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
No, that's
great.
awesome.
Well, if you could give, and we love to ask this question, if you could give your 18-year-old self as an entrepreneur, right,
Yes.
in that mindset, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
I guess never say no. Always take the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
There have been so many opportunities that have come along, and I've generally taken them. It's taken me to South America and other places, into other jobs, other experiences,
Yeah.
and to have that new challenge. And I was fortunate enough to be with one organization for 30 years and
Wow.
never do the same job more than 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Well,
crazy.
And that's because they knew I would take that next job and that next
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah.
And that's what always drove me.
You
Yeah.
know, it's interesting that you say that too, because I've heard this so many times that if you want to travel the world and you want to live a full life, then the oil and gas industry is where to do it, because you can travel there. It's all over the
Yes.
place. You can go anywhere. Like you said, you went
Yes.
to all these different places. You learned so many different things, but that's great advice. Never say no.
Thank you.
I love that.
That's great.
Great.
That's great. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we leave? So how do we find you? Is there a reason that we want to talk to you, or is
Yeah,
there what?
no, I think so. We're certainly out there developing, and I think as every startup, we're always looking for funds in the development side. So there's certainly that. We've got Ozona CCS is our website, ozonaccs.com.
OzonaCCS.com.
Yes, so
Okay.
you can find us there. We're on LinkedIn. Do a search there.
Okay.
Find me. Again, we're in that development process. I think we've got some big things coming. We'll be announcing, and this is really our first time out there. We've always tried to sort of operate very, very low until we had projects. And we find there's a bunch of guys in the industry that are out there that have announced projects that really don't have a volume, don't make sense, don't have a place to go. And there's been a lot of that in the industry, just not real stuff.
Yeah.
And we want to be real. That's what we're
Right.
bringing forward. I think with that, you're going to see some real hardcore announcements, some joint ventures, some other things we're doing in the next couple months.
Do we have breaking news opportunity here?
Not quite yet.
Okay,
but,
all
but
right.
it's
Hey man, you never know.
Call when you do.
You know how many people are going to be watching this right now.
Yes.
But hey, we'll just tease them saying, stay tuned and be sure to get on your website.
Absolutely.
Where's your office?
We're in San Antonio.
San Antonio.
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
That's good.
Yes.
That's so fun.
Where it's warm. I want nothing to do with cold weather
I
anymore.
know, yes. Now the
I
warm
would say
weather
no
is
to going back.
Okay, there you go.
Yes.
You would say no to something. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't blame you. That's great. I love
Yeah.
San Antonio.
Well,
Yes.
thank you, Rich. It's been a pleasure getting to know
Thanks so much.
more about you, more about your business, and we look forward to the breaking news that's coming
Great.
soon.
There you go.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Hey, well, everybody, thank you so much for being here and listening to Rich. And there's so many different things about the oil and gas business that just makes it fascinating and extraordinary, if you will. And this is another one of them right here with Rich. And go to his website, CCS, OzonaCCS.com. Not info dot. No, that was our last guy. Got me on the info dot.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
but anyway, yes,
OzonaCCS.com.
OzonaCCS.com, and learn more about carbon capture and why do we need to capture our carbons. And you'll find that out on his website. So thank you so much for being here. Until our next episode. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.